Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on the dynamic duo of UI UX. We're pleased to present Mark Becker, one of the firm's partners, and he's going to start us off.
Great. Well, thank you for attending our webinar. Just a few logistical things before we get going. If you have questions, our moderator today will be none other than Holly Schubert. Say hi, Holly.
Hi.
So please send her your questions. If you have technical difficulties, can't get into the meeting, obviously you can't send anything to Holly because you're not in the meeting. But I would be talking to you. So if you have trouble other than getting into the meeting, like you can't hear us, the video is choppy or anything like that, again, please message Holly and she can take care of you. So next slide. Just a few facts about CDH. We've been in business based here in Grand Rapids and with an office in downtown Detroit as well for 25 years. We have roughly 40 staff members. One thing that's unique about CDH is we're a consulting firm. We're not a hardware sales firm, box kickers as we used to call them. We're not a software or licensing firm. We are professional consultants. We've always been professional consultants, and we pride ourselves on that because that helps us be more objective as we provide our consulting. We like to think of ourselves and our relationship with our clients as a trusted advisor, and we seek to be the most knowledgeable advisor they have when it comes to the technologies that we consult in. We have several partnerships. We focus mostly on Microsoft solutions. We're a Microsoft Gold provider. We also focus on Nintex, which also rides on top of SharePoint as a workflow and forms solution. We also specialize in several cloud technologies, one of which is Microsoft's Azure platform, as well as Amazon Web Services. And to round it out, we also write many applications, and some of these apps center around e-commerce, such as NotCommerce, which is a .NET-based e-commerce application. And we're a partner with New Horizons, so we're excited to, if they're on the call, introduce them and announce their great technology training and resources that they bring to the table. So that's the NHLS, and we work well with them as well as some of our other partners. Next slide, please. That's it. Oh, so CDH has many areas of expertise, including infrastructure, collaboration, project management, unified communications, and mobility. So Ben, where's the stack that Ben is in? He's kind of a sort of mobility / collaboration. A lot of our technologies require Ben's unique set of skills. So Ben is a busy guy. We have a few other UX, UI personnel as well, and they all seem to be really busy. I think what you're here to learn today is more about how user interfaces impact the success and adoption of a product. And in this case, it happens to be Microsoft SharePoint product. But you can pretty much draw from what he's saying the same lessons for mobile device, for websites that are not on SharePoint, and for other applications as well. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Ben, who you will be in good hands with. Take it away, Ben.
Great. Thanks for the introduction, Mark. So as Mark did indicate, I'm a user experience, user interface designer here at CDH. I've been here a little bit over a year, and in my time with the company, I've been able to work on websites and enterprise infrastructure, intranets and extranets of varying size and complexity, and all the better because it provides a lot of variety, which UX and UI disciplines are well fit for. So what I wanted to present to you today is not just design a SharePoint user interface for business web applications, but in the first half, I want to discuss a little bit about the philosophy and discipline of UI and UX. I realize that those of you attending might have varying levels of experience with this, some not at all, and some to a great degree. So I wanted to kind of cut through the middle and give you a general idea about why UI and UX is important, and then in the latter half of this to specifically discuss SharePoint's page model, which we use to customize the look and feel of enterprise sites, their front end and their back end, mobile devices and browsers, and all of those displays. So the latter half is going to be a little bit more technical and somewhat of a tutorial style. I'm going to actually do a demonstration of the customizing of a page layout and the content search web part. So let's jump into it. Let's start talking about UX and UI. So I should say, right before we get into that, just the general topics we're going to discuss here are best practices, the page model, and this demonstration. And the page model is going to focus a little bit on the dynamic content rendering that you can get out of SharePoint. This, again, can be applied to other dynamic displays and other web platforms as well. So UX and UI. Let's define those terms quickly. So user experience is the analytical practice of looking at how a user feels when they're interacting with the system. There's a lot of emphasis on non-technical methods for getting user impressions, doing studies, card sorting, and those kinds of things, all to get an idea of how someone feels and how their experience is with a system so that we can better inform the UI, which is literally the user interface. That's how a person is interacting with the system. The navigation that you see on a website is part of the UI. A like or a dislike button on Facebook are part of the UI, but there's more to it than just the physical and non-tangible aspects of a site. There are things like consistency. Branding is another big one. You know you're on a company's website when you're jumping through pages because they use the same colors and they use the same rhetoric. Those kinds of things are very important because if you're on someone's website and you're not having a consistent or familiar experience, you're going to be confused. And these days, if you're confused for a second, you've made your decision, you don't want to spend any time there. So really important for UX and UI to play nice. They fit together like two peas in a pod. And so keep that in mind as we're going through all of this. So this slide here is an infographic of 4 stages of different intranets, expressly enterprise level, but these can be for public-facing sites and small businesses as well. Pay attention to the bar that says focus, that's on the x-axis. That is the indicating what the focus is of each of these stages. So stage 1 is providing information for basic intranets. Those are generally news and announcements, some ability to navigate and use information libraries and self-services. Stage 2 is for extended intranets. Those are focused on enabling generic interaction. Stage 3 for basic digital workplaces, which are much more advanced and allow users to fulfill their roles using these types of workplaces online. And so they're focused on specific work support. And stage 4 is the full enchilada, the business transformation is the big focus there. So keeping that in mind, when you're looking at UI and UX influences for the architecture, consider if you're trying to inform your audience or if you are providing interaction for them. A lot of businesses will make that decision based on size. So an informing website is going to give you things like news and announcements, notifications for building specific or geographic specific workplace information. And interacting websites, on the other hand, are kind of those stage 3, stage 4 style workplace, digital workplaces. They're going to allow you to fill out forms, submit workflows, use a web-based email system, social collaboration between teams and colleagues. Those things are all part of the interaction. So when you're developing a UI, you want to keep that in mind, because informing is going to be kind of simple. Interacting is going to be more complex, and with more complexity, the more you need to pay attention to how people are performing their jobs and interacting with these websites. So going down that line of thought, we talk about evaluating needs with website projects. So business objectives are actually pretty high on there. We talk about the importance of user experience because in a lot of ways it is paramount to the success or failure of a website. But if the business objectives aren't being met, then the project's a failure. So you want to first and foremost ask these questions: why is the business developing a workplace? And then build around that. Task analysis that you see here is the practice of looking at a user's role and their job. What are the specific things they do as part of their daily role, and how can it be accommodated by the system that you're building? These kinds of small decisions that are made concurrently throughout the day or the week or the month, those are going to be features that you want to cater to in your design. So if someone is constantly submitting forms, you're going to want to make those forms easy to access. You can put those in navigation, or you can provide dynamic tools to access those places. Personas are a practice of developing fictional user descriptions. These can be the people that work for you if you're a business, or if you're a public-facing site, and let's say you're a restaurant, you're going to have a wide audience of potential customers. So you're going to consider age, demographics, access to media, income. All of those things can be part of the persona that are going to help you infer what kinds of things to include or omit from your user interface. And then media channels is concerned with what kind of device are you going to be getting your information from, or how are you going to be accessing this workplace or this public site. Obviously, phones are almost ubiquitous at this point, and so they're a very common method for experiencing this information. But there's tablets, there's browsers, there's displays of multiple sizes. And these media channels are really crucial to consider when it comes to designing an interface, because with little amounts of space and a lot amount of space, you've got either your hands are bound or you've got free reign. And so you have to have a very tight definition of what your media channels are going to be before you even start developing a design. And some other considerations are search-first interfaces, personalizing, and mobile-first designs. Search-first interfaces are very convenient for websites that are explicitly used for document management. As we all know, your libraries on your computer can become kind of labyrinthic, and you'll lose your way very quickly. Things can be confusing. So with content management systems that accommodate searching, you can get around that confusion and provide clean layouts for your users. I kind of like to use Amazon as an example, because you can search for pretty much anything, and with your results you're going to get refinement options, and those kind of help you drill down, because you have an idea in your head, and your manual input into those results are going to help you make your own experience better. So you want to consider all of these things when it comes down to the design and experience for future websites. So as I explained earlier, I wanted to talk to you about the SharePoint page model. The webinar is advertised as designing user interfaces for business applications in SharePoint, and specifically we're going to be going down the road with SharePoint 2013 for publishing sites. There are different options you can get for configurations, but publishing sites afford you the most customization and the most control over layout and display. So that's what we're going to get into. So this page model graphic is actually provided by Microsoft. You're going to find all this stuff on Microsoft's developer network site in even more specific detail, but this is to give you the big picture. So consider left to right these three rectangles. The first on the left is master page. So This is a file that determines the Chrome state of your website and persists through all of the pages that you're going to be seeing on a site. You can have a master page for your front end and for your administrative end. This is kind of an important distinction to make because front end is going to be essentially your public-facing side, and your administrative end is going to be for people managing content, moving things around, watching workflows, accessing permissions. So you don't necessarily want the front and the back end to look the same all of the time. You can if you want, but they more often than not are different to some degree. So with the master page, you've got your header and footer, your Chrome defined, and then digging down, you've got a page layout. So page layout, you can have one or you can have many. And in the publishing site, you're going to find you're going to have at least 3 or 4 different types of pages, and not all of them are going to be formatted similarly because your content is going to be changing. So page layouts allow you to customize page field controls, and the layout for dynamic content. You can have authored content as well. You see on the rectangle on the far right there where it indicates what those red areas are in the page layout. Those can be predefined, or you can allow your users to interact and create content to appear on those pages. So a further rendition of this layout is everything all put together. On the left, you can see just the diagram explaining the general terms, and on the right, kind of a crude rendering of what that would look like. So your master page is the top and the bottom, and your page layout is defining the areas in the middle with what looks to be a phone here and some written content. So those can be dynamic and they can be static as well. So when everything comes together, you have your layout in SharePoint. So it's easy to discuss these things. They are a little bit more complicated when it comes down to customizing them. But rather than look at a diagram, let's consider a real out-of-the-box SharePoint example. So SharePoint 2013 out-of-the-box, pay attention to these color codes. They are going to help you kind of navigate with your eyes. The area up at the top is your navigation. That is defined by the master page. So you've got a site logo, you've got page titles, you have all of these navigation terms which can be dynamic or they can be manually input. And these, again, are user interface considerations you want to make for organizing the content in your site. It's very easy to get carried away and have a link for everything, but considering how your users are going to be interacting with this information, you want to be very well defined and rely on those user experience practices to give you better honed answers for what to provide. Page layout here outlined in green. That's the body content. There's navigation on the left, and then in the dotted purple squares, those are the display templates and content within the page layout. So you can change the rendering of even specific pieces of content within the page layout. And that's part of what we're going to discuss today. Before we go on to the example, I wanted to talk a little bit about the mobile first or the device channel considerations that you want to make when you're designing your user interfaces. SharePoint provides you a way to deliver master pages specifically to different devices. This is a huge advantage because rather than just relying on CSS alone and wonky JavaScript, you can use the master page, which is going to have predefined layouts and deliver custom files to all of your devices. So this is really handy if you've got an audience that's going to be accessing your content from multiple devices and media. And here's another consideration with user interfaces. Aside from just device channel delivery, with media viewport resolutions, you want to consider that people are not going to be keeping their browser at the same size all the time. Even if they're on a full desktop display, they're going to be reducing the size of that browser, and so you want to consider resolution breakpoints, which are monitored through CSS. So on the right here, we've got some code from a CSS file, and it's defining a media query. So in a display that's 480 pixels minimum, we've got a background color and a font size defined for our body element. So I wanted to just show this here because you can anticipate how your content is going to flow inside of the device. So that's really helpful if you have a lot of content and you know that some things are more important than others. On smaller screens, you get to define what those important items are and display them first. Okay, so dynamic content. We looked earlier at the pieces of content inside of page layouts. With content search web parts, you're able to dynamically pull from the indexed information and resources from SharePoint's content management in very, very deep levels of specificity. So SharePoint has a index that's going to be crawling all of your content. That covers your documents, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, images, list items, pretty much everything. And so we're kind of like going into the infrastructure area at the moment, but without delving too deeply down the rabbit hole, all of that in-text information can be kind of flagged in a way that allows you to access it easily when you're defining these dynamic areas on the front end of your site. That's done almost explicitly through crawled property definitions and managed properties. And you'll see how those play into the display templates in just a moment here. And display templates control how the dynamic content is rendered. In groups, or defining how the display is in groups and defining how the display is as individual items. So another Microsoft provided infographic here is showing us those three page model displays, and then a fourth here which shows the content search web part and the control templates around it. So as I was saying, you can define controls for the group of search result items and the individual ones here. This gives you a lot of leeway in terms of how things are going to appear on your site. And just a very basic rendition, you've got a horizontal and a vertical layout of that search content. More importantly, here on the right, this is the web part editor, and you can see where we're selecting a display template for a list and for a picture left, 3 lines on right. These are out-of-the-box display templates that SharePoint provides to you. You can use these with great effect, and sometimes that's enough, but other times you need more specificity or detail or interaction. So by customizing these kinds of display templates, you can achieve that. And just one more infographic to kind of show how this works. You've got the item templates on the left in those blue squares, and on the right here we've got what looks to be cameras with descriptions and detail that one might assume would take you to maybe a purchasing page if this is a shopping site, for instance. And one more, you can see outlined in blue, we have the content search web part completely here. Level 2, which is the control template, encompasses the control description for all of these items together, and then individually at the bottom level at 3 here in the dotted purple lines. So I know that's a lot to digest. I was kind of going to glaze over that a little bit so we could have a look with a live demonstration. So before I jump over to doing that, are there any questions right now that I can answer? If not, we can get to it. So what we're looking at right now is an out-of-the-box SharePoint site. This is actually on Office 365. So the goals for this demonstration are to show you how to make a custom master page, a page layout, and a content search web part. That would be way too much to include into just 45 minutes. So I've prepared some of these materials. We're not going to be looking too much at the code, but I wanted to show you how the general process flows with creating a custom user interface on a SharePoint website. So looking in SharePoint Designer, which is a common programming interface that we use for managing these SharePoint sites, as someone with full control, you're able to look at the entire file structure, which is going to be important because we need to get into a catalog folder here. And inside of that, we've got the master page folder. So this is the repository for all of the files that you get out of the box with SharePoint, and where I would suggest keeping everything unified for convenience sake. So looking at this site here, we can take a look at the out-of-the-box options for master pages. These are Seattle and Oslo, which are pretty clean, pretty sparse, and they allow you to get most of what you need out of a layout. But again, we were talking about the importance for branding and design. So that's why we're going to need to make a new master page. So you can see Seattle and Oslo here. This would allow us to define it as the default front end master page and as the system master page in the back end for the administrators. So when you're creating a new master page, you can make a copy of Seattle or Oslo if you like. They have a couple different variations in terms of their layout, but they're similar enough. And make a copy of that, and you can use that as the basis for your new design. So for the purpose of this demonstration, I created one off of Seattle, and we're going to throw that into effect right here. And this is all done through the site settings master page area. So we're looking at the back end. Things haven't changed in layout because we haven't defined the system master page as a custom master page. We're going to keep that the same way. But if we go to the home default page for this site, we're going to we'll be able to see that things have changed a little bit. So obviously the colors changed. What's happening with this custom master page is we have references to CSS files that change the color for navigation for the side layouts here and for body content. What we want to take is to define the page layout here. So page layouts, again, they vary for publishing sites, but there's a lot of out-of-the-box options. Looking at the file structure here, you can see there's just a handful of commonly used ones are the blank web part page, enterprise wiki, and welcome pages down here as well. So what I want to do is add the custom master page or the custom page layout that I prepared earlier. So when I'm working in SharePoint, I like to keep a project file folder inside of the master page folder. Again, keeping everything unified helps to alleviate confusion and lost files down the road. So you can see here the Dynamic Duo Internet Master is actually inside of the project folder. It's not kept inside of the master page folder. This is, again, just keep all your custom files together as much as possible. All right, so when you are editing a page individually, you have an option to change what that page layout is going to be. So if we go ahead and flip this into edit mode, up here at the top, we've got a ribbon of options for editing different content on the page, but we're concerned with the page actions area right here and the page layout button up at the top. So this is going to show us all the options that we can use for page layouts on this individual page. If we go down here, this is the predefined Dynamic Duo page layout that I've prepared for today. So you simply click on it, activate it, and SharePoint's going to load up your content with a different layout. So things are already looking a little bit different. If you remember the page model that we were reviewing earlier, the Chrome is defined differently now, and so is the content in the middle. So what's different with the edit mode is you're seeing predefined areas in the page layout for content. So we have a page title. This is authored content area. You can see that I can change this. And that will, upon saving, will change on the layout. These areas here are what are called web part zones. So they contain the individual web parts. One of them that we're going to be adding here momentarily is the content search web part. But it's important to know that the web part zones are part of the page layout, and those are customizable in size and shape as well, and appearance. And on the right, you can see some pre-existing web parts that are in a right column web part zone here. So the webinar was focused on showing you how to do or add a content search web part. So let's go ahead and do that now. When you click Add a Web Part in the Web Part zone, it's going to open up the ribbon up at the top, and you're given a plethora of choices from which to select. Earlier I had mentioned that there's a wide variety of different information sources in SharePoint that you can pull from in terms of what dynamic content you're presenting. Those can be the different libraries and lists and picture image repositories that you have. They can be blog sources, they can be RSS feeds, forums, search results for different content. It really gets quite deep and exceeds the scope of this webinar. So what we want to do to add a content search web part is go to content rollup and then content search. So this is going to add a generic CSWP web part, and we're going to customize the content that it's searching for so that we know what we're going to be getting, and then we can change the layout of how that is going to look. So it would be important for us to know what we're trying to create here. For the purpose of this demonstration, I thought it might be fun to show a list of open positions at this Dynamic Duo company. So when you're in the back end of the, or I should say in the site contents for your site, this is where you're going to have your applications. And the term's a little confusing because SharePoint refers to lists and libraries as applications, but just keep that in mind. So I have an open positions list pre-created here. We've got a title for the position, the department that the position is in, what type of position it is, if it's full-time or part-time, and application date. So let's try and render this differently on the front page than what we have it already. Now, conveniently, the SharePoint search will pull in recently added or recently edited content, and it also has pre-existing display templates that apply to the content. So we're actually seeing those come up right here, but with the display template, that doesn't look very good. So we want to change that. Next to the title on the web part is the web part editor menu. You got to open that up, and it will reload the page with the customizable options for your individual web part. It's a little bit funky. Let's try see if we can't reload this. Sorry for the delay, folks. Okay, that's still a little bit odd. I'm going to move this web part over to another web part zone to maybe alleviate that overlapping issue. And that seemed to work for the moment. So what we were originally trying to do here is change the display template. So it's using the original list control template and the item template called picture on left, 3 lines on right. So before we go around switching anything, when it comes down to creating a custom display template, it helps to open up SharePoint Designer and create a duplicate of an existing display template. And all of those are housed inside a conveniently named display template folder inside of the master page folder. And the content search web part display templates are inside of the content web parts folder here. And so you're seeing these kind of accurately named control, slideshow, control, list with paging, etc., and then item, diagnostic, item, open positions, item, picture, 3 lines, etc. What might strike you as odd is there are the same name for 2 different files. One is an HTML file and one is a JavaScript file. SharePoint's set up to convert the HTML file into JavaScript automatically. It was their anticipatory effort to allow designers without JavaScript experience to create these display templates in an HTML format. So what I have done is created a new display template called Open Positions, which you can see here, and this is a duplicate of the picture 3 lines. Notice I'm going to open up the HTML file to perform my editing. So inside here you've got a lot of code. The JavaScript inside here is commented out. This gets rendered into that JavaScript file earlier that we discussed. But this is where you can define HTML to place the content that you've searched for. There are a lot of great tutorials that explain how to convert values from your search into JavaScript objects if you're savvy enough to go down that route. Those resources are definitely available and they're very ubiquitous. So I would very much suggest you pursue that. You can do a lot of cool stuff with these display templates if you can work your way around some JavaScript. So on the page here, we want to switch our item display template, and it's picked up open position. So let's select that, and we can see that the values have changed. They're rendered differently, and this little icon here is linking to the display form for that item. I just clicked on a pencil sharpener, and that's going to open up here for the record in the list that we had defined earlier. So that kind of trick is done by looking at the managed properties. When we were discussing the search index in SharePoint, those managed properties are accessible through these templates. So you want to grab those up here, and they are able to be defined as values here in your JavaScript. And we've taken the link URL, which is a managed property for our list item, and we're placing it down in our HTML here, I should say here, inside of an anchor tag with an image, and it is rendering up here as a handy link. So this is, again, the edit view. If we click OK, this is going to apply the changes we've made. And SharePoint's publishing features allow you to save in multiple steps. If you're working on a page, you might want to save at different periods of time. And then when you're finally done, you can check it in so that other colleagues or other people who are working on the page can have a turn with it without overwriting your content. Or you can simply publish it. It will be checked in and saved live and made the current version for everybody to see. And as we'll see in just a moment, it's going to apply here with our open positions content search web part showing all the available items from our list. So I know that was super fast and there was a lot going into that, but the key takeaways here are that you can use the SharePoint page model to create a custom interface that looks nothing like the SharePoint out-of-the-box features that we had seen earlier. So we've got some time for questions here. Is there any existing questions off the top, or should we open it up?
I think we can open it up.
All right.
I have a question.
Sure.
Is there a limit to the number of master pages I can have on the site?
There's a limit in terms of how many you can have applied. So you can have a master page for the front end of your site and for the back end. Back end is commonly called the system master page. You can have a bunch of different pages that you can apply for, or I should say a bunch of different master pages that you can apply to individual subsites. But at any site level, you're going to have essentially one for the front and one for the back.
Okay.
That reminds me actually of one thing that I will provide a link for in the slide deck, but the copying of master pages to work as a foundation for your custom master page. There are some really great examples online of minimalist master pages that cut out the bloat and by doing so allow for easier implementation of custom designs. One that comes to mind is the CodePlex blueprint by Kyle Schaeffler or as I said, on CodePlex. And so that is reduced. It's mobile-friendly, mobile-first design, and it incorporates some really slick CSS classes that are built in with responsive views and breakpoints.
question too. Is there the display templates behave the same way between like an on-premises install of SharePoint and Office 365?
They do behave slightly differently. So SharePoint Foundation has certain limitations. You aren't able to leverage search to that degree. Foundation has basic search features, but the customization of managed properties and crawled properties are going to be a lot more limited. And then in standard server and enterprise server, those are more robust and allow you to get more out of your indexed information and content.
It's a good tool for making custom display templates. Like what's a...
Well, what we just saw in that demo was using SharePoint Designer. So that's kind of the common one. It has limitations, of course, but it's pretty good for customizing your JavaScript, CSS files, HTML, the basics. But you can also use other DAWs, but other web authoring software interfaces. You can map your SharePoint drives to Dreamweaver or Komodo Edit, Coda, Visual Studio. The list is pretty extensive.
Can you work with like all the jQuery customizations and things like that in a display template? Can you?
You can, absolutely, and I personally leverage the jQuery library in pretty much everything I do, and so handily enough, you can incorporate that into the master pages, page layouts, and display templates. And there's good reasons to add code to any one of those different stages. The rendering of content can sometimes impart some time delays, and so code rendering is going to be contingent on some of those things. And so the way that SharePoint has been built allows you to have that level of flexibility in terms of rendering at a high, medium, or a low level. Yeah.
Thanks.
So then we have a question. Will custom master pages and page layouts be available in any site that's created?
Well, yeah. So every time you create an instance of a subsite, it's going to, generally it's set to inherit from its parent site. So it's going to take all of the design choices and customizations you've made and apply it to the next iteration. But you can break that inheritance, and you can create a custom master page or page layout for subsequent subsites as well. And that's going on down the line. There's really no limit to that.
So then I'm going to assume this is a follow-up question.
Sure.
So based on that, can I use dynamic content in my pages without relying on the content search web part?
Yeah, you can. So when we looked at that ribbon briefly, which we used to add the content search web part, a lot of those other web parts that are available are dynamic. So they're going to pull from, for instance, let's say you've got a document library where you're keeping your Word files and your PowerPoint files and your Excel files and everything. You can add a web part to the home page, and that's going to dynamically pull from the library that you've set up without any level of customization. But I will add, you can customize those too. Everything is very customizable, of course, but I will say that out of the box, you can drag and drop a lot of the content and get the dynamic stuff without having to be too involved with the code.
So then where should they keep their custom files organized?
I typically keep it in the inside the file structure for SharePoint. It's the catalogs file folder and the master page file folder, and that is more or less the repository for everything that SharePoint has out of the box. I keep it there just because these customizations reflect, similar file structures. It kind of makes sense to have them in a unified spot. I like to keep a project folder with the project name, usually abbreviated. And then inside of that, I have an image folder, a CSS folder, a JavaScript folder, and sometimes an HTML folder if I need it. I'm happy to answer any non-technical questions too, if there are any about user experience or UI as a discipline.
I have a question.
Sure.
The use of Team Foundation Server and the authoring of these master pages, content pages, and things of that sort. Have you used, or how often do you see like Team Foundation used for checking in and out documentation and auditing?
My experience with Team Foundation has been kind of limited in terms of the customization of user interfaces. They do allow customized master pages, but page layouts are a lot more tricky just by virtue of the way that they're set up. So you can achieve quite a bit by customizing those master pages. The content inside of the page layouts, though, provides, I think, a few more obstacles, and sometimes there are walls that you just can't get over, unfortunately. Because search works differently in Team Foundation, those dynamic web parts for content search are going to behave kind of at a more limited level. Does that answer your question?
No, that's good. The follow-up question to that would be, when you design a site, when you were showing us the x-axis on that first graph, you know, talking about a basic page to a full digital workspace, for project, you know, layout and milestones and things of that stuff. What do you guys do to make that easier? Do you use any outside resources? Or how do you handle managing a project like this, going from like a basic intranet to a basic digital workplace?
Okay, so the process of going from designing to implementation?
Yes.
Yeah, so, well, typically we have a discovery period up front, so it's really important to meet with the stakeholders and the subject matter experts from the client side. We want to, you know, sponge as much information from them as possible, talking about those business objectives, and then discussing or trying to interpret what they know about their own users. That kind of lays our foundation for the beginning of the project, and then we really push towards getting access to a couple different key users that fulfill those roles. Remember, we were talking a little bit about task analysis being an important aspect of needs evaluation. So hopefully we can get that. Sometimes we don't get that in-person opportunity. But let's say we just have our basic foundation. We take those requirements and then we go through a mock-up stage. We create, typically we use Fireworks for that. But we also use Axure for a little bit more complicated interfaces. So there's some degree of activity, or interactivity, I'm sorry. So we provide it to the client. They get to say yay or nay. We make changes. And then once those are predefined, we kind of have a scope for the project. We know what our minimum viable product is going to be, and then we bring on other team members for our infrastructure, for our custom development for certain aspects of the site that aren't just part of the page model, and then we work as a team to bring those things together.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for the question. Well, if there aren't any other questions, that is the conclusion of the slide deck that I had prepared. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have. You want to shoot me an email. I know that Holly is going to be putting the slide deck up with everything that you saw today, and probably some additional resources I might think of on the way home that you might want to see.
Absolutely. And also we have a brief survey that if you would like to fill out, we send you, everybody who fills out the survey receives a $5 Amazon.com gift card. Is our way of saying thank you for spending a bit of time to tell us how we did and what we did right and what we could do better next time. We always appreciate that feedback. So I'm going to be putting the survey in the chat window. There you go. And we will stay on the line for another 10 or so minutes. And if you have any questions, just feel free to speak up. We're going to go on mute on our end. Just so.
Hi, looks like we have a question. Let me open up the, actually, you know what, Holly, do you have that chat window in front of you?
I do, but I don't have the question.
Let's see here.
You must have sent it to you privately.
Oh, okay. Brian What, again, were the mock-up software packages? Well, mock-ups are typically part of our discovery process here at CDH. We we hold conversations and meetings with our clients and stakeholders to get an idea about what they want. We do some research about existing systems they may have, and then we just create flat two-dimensional mock-ups in mock-up software, something like Adobe Fireworks or Axure. Those are just graphic interpretations of what the solution could be. So that's when you say mock-up, that's my understanding of what you mean. Can you specify a little bit more about your question? Because I feel like I might be missing the mark on that just slightly.
No, that was fine. It was the two pieces of software you mentioned, Fireworks and Axure. I was just trying to remember what they were.
Oh, sure. Yep, great.
Thank you.
Yeah, Fireworks is, if you have any experience with Photoshop, it's really easy to transition into that. Axure requires a little bit of, there's a bit of a learning curve there, but lynda.com has some great tutorials for that. YouTube has plenty. And Axure's advantage is that you can create kind of templates or design patterns that you can then implement onto your mockups. If you have, let's say, a 100-page intranet, it's really handy to have those repeatable, reusable pages.
Perfect. Thank you.
Felicia has a question. She says, our staff is already familiar with using Office 365 for documents and collaboration. Do SharePoint sites integrate well with this, or is it typically kept as a separate platform?
So the description that I'm hearing is that you're already using Office 365 for that. Yeah, SharePoint is built to jive really well with Office 365 and pretty much, I would say, not a completely seamless integration, but they leverage one another very, very nicely. And to boot, there's a lot of emphasis on utilizing that cloud format to incorporate sociability and collaboration features into SharePoint team sites and enterprise pages as well.
Does that answer your question, Felicia?
Great.
Felicia said yes, thank you.